One of the Grateful Dead's #1 fans. And she also happens to be a brilliant political commentator and author. And Coulter joins us now. And a lot of people are surprised when they find out how much you like the Dead.
Yes, and in fact, I was working for the Senate Judiciary Committee back then. You will find a lovely statement, a lovely tribute to Jerry Garcia.
Really?
The senator I was working for, Spence Abraham.
You wrote it for him, or was he also a Deadhead?
No, in fact, he was so cool that after the Jerry Garcia tribute statement, he came in the next day saying, "Hey, I heard this Jerry Garcia guy is associated with drug use."
What'd you say?
I said, "Don't believe the liberal media."
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I can't believe you would buy into that. Did you actually? Did you used to like follow him around and go to a lot of concerts and stuff?
I did. I only had a few years before he passed away way too soon.
Yeah.
But it was mostly, I saw him whenever he came to town, or the band, and would go all nights in Connecticut and New York, as a kid in high school and college. But it wasn't until after law school that I had a lot of disposable income to spend. I was not sleeping in VW buses. We'd fly around the country to places we just wanted to go to, sail in San Francisco during the day, go see the psychedelic rock band by night.
I regret that I got into this world a little later in my life because I had a whole other career before. But one of the things I'm really regretting is that I didn't go to a Grateful Dead concert with you, Ann.
Oh, they were a blast.
I bet they were. You should write books just about that experience, actually.
Yeah.
Well,
yes, and Deadheads are really lovely people.
Yes. You are a lovely person as well, so it fits perfectly, by the way. And I do want to get to your latest column about how the Washington Post has skated on the whole Covington High School kid case. But before I get to that, I'm just dumbfounded right now by this Mario Lopez story. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time looking at it, where Mario Lopez dares to say that maybe we shouldn't inject on a 3-year-old this understanding that they can pick and choose what gender they live as, and he's now fighting for his job.
Yes, and he's had to apologize.
Yeah.
I think the better part of valor would have been, you can't run the experiment twice, but I think it was a mistake to apologize. In interpersonal relationships, of course, apologies are when are necessary and important. But whenever the mob gangs up, when it's, just some left-wing fad, and no, how dare you say this? I think everyone should have learned from Trump. Learn from me. This is hysteria. And the moment they taste blood, they will come at you even more ferociously. An apology when you've done nothing wrong, and if it's public commentary, there's certainly nothing wrong with his public commentary. I would say at the moment, 97% of all Americans agree with exactly what he said as he said it, and go back 3 or 4 years, and 100% of Americans would.
Right.
This transgender thing, it's so weird how it's just suddenly come up, and it's the biggest thing going. And all he was talking about, just FYI, as you just said, was giving little kids hormone blockers and changing their development before they've even hit puberty.
Yeah.
He said that perfectly clearly. Immediately his Wikipedia page, by the way, was changed to describe him as like an anti-trans activist.
Right.
And a woman hater, because his line about the Me Too stuff, again, if you could take a secret ballot, I'm kind of thinking you'd get, 99% agreements. I'll exclude, Andrea Dworkin, and that's about it. But he said, yes, it was an important movement, but this line about how you must always believe women, he said, I think I'm almost virtually quoting directly, no, people lie, and women are people too, so that doesn't mean believe all of them. I started in politics with high crimes and misdemeanors about a certain felonious president, and the exact same people attacking Mario Lopez now were the ones who told me that not only do women lie, dozens of them lie in the case of Bill Clinton.
Right. All about the same thing. And by the way, to bring it full circle, if I remember right, every chapter of that book, High Crimes and Misdemeanors, was actually named after a Grateful Dead song, wasn't it? It was a little Easter egg.
Subhead.
A little Easter egg. Very impressive stuff there. And I would love to get to this. You know what? Before we get to the latest column, real quick, first impressions. Everyone laughed at you. I mean, literally laughed at you because you were one of the first people to say in 2015 that Donald Trump had the inside track for the nomination and will probably win it. Based on these debates, what do you make of the Democrats? Who do you think has the inside track for them?
Oh, good question. I'm not a Democrat, so my predictions are much less reliable in this area.
Try to think like the anti-Ann, like the bizarro world Ann Coulter.
Right. For their sake, and I guess for the country's sake, not that any of it's going to make much of a difference because any Democrat president will end up hiring pretty much the same people. But so far, I mean, the only candidate within the realm of the plausible is Joe Biden. That is clearly not what the base wants. But as I was saying on Breitbart earlier today, I feel like the Democrats watching those debates and listening to the audience cheer the craziest remarks, the positions that, if there is such a thing as a politically suicidal position, I would say vowing to take away everyone's private health insurance would be one of those policies. I would say decriminalizing the border and opening up all of our generous welfare programs that the Democrats want to make even more generous, opening that up to whatever trillion number of people there are in the world, provided they can walk across the border. That's going to be our big immigration check. Must live within walking distance. I would say these are suicidal positions. I mean, 2 New York Times op-ed writers, very liberal, Thomas Friedman, Frank Bruni, and I don't even read the Times that much, have come out in the last few weeks saying, Democrats, you can't be for open borders. You're going to lose. Meanwhile, any statement about, I mean, they want to give the Democrats, illegals rights that Americans don't have. No, let's go and find them and bring them back if they've been deported. And that gets huge cheers from this insane audience. So it occurs to me watching them, I hope this is right. I hope the country hasn't changed so much yet. They're going through that process we went through with the Tea Party candidates, we Republicans, where you had all of these candidates running against what were called, and not without some reason, establishment Republicans. And we just lost Senate seat after Senate seat.
Yeah.
Remember?
Oh, yes.
Aiken, Richard Murdoch, Christine O'Donnell, and because the base, and I like the Tea Party people, I think a lot of them were being sort of scammed by consultants who just wanted the money, as in the case of my home state, that wrestling lady they kept running. Yeah. Lovely lady. She never had a chance, but man, those campaign consultants wanted to milk her for every dime she had. Yeah. So, you know,
they're doing that now.
Parties do get taken over by passions, fevers, and people just trying to make money, which can lead to a long losing streak. So I hope no Democrats are listening, because unless the country has changed so much that the Democrats have imported enough people who voluntarily voted for Hugo Chavez, unless that's what our population is now, I don't see this ending well for the Democrats.
Can you stick with us so we can talk about your article about the Nick Sandmann defamation suit?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Ann Coulter stays with us. I know you will too. First, we got to check in though with Ed Rodriguez, because it's 4:15, and you know that we do traffic every 10 minutes on the 5s. What's going on in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center?
Oh, we got brake lights. There you go, northbound.
A bit. And, well, Ann Coulter's also a friend, if I may say, and she continues with us. Ann, thanks again for joining us, as always, on Fridays here.
Absolutely.
This article that you've got, all your columns are great, but I love it when you bring your vast knowledge of the law to the table. Let me lay it out here. The Washington Post said of Nick Sandmann, this high school kid from Covington, Kentucky, who was in town for the March for Life, said he accosted and physically intimidated this guy, Nathan Phillips, said that they had blocked Mr. Phillips from getting to the Lincoln Memorial and refused to let him leave, and said that he was part of a group chanting, "Build the Wall, Trump 2020, go back to Africa," and things like that. All of those things are lies. We know that now. How is this not defamation?
It's pretty stunning. The case is on appeal, and I hope it will be overturned, because, I mean, it's been long enough that public figures have had to live with absolutely anything being able to be said about a public figure. You, me, Donald Trump, they can say we, nail kittens to church doors. There's nothing you can do. So I love when people alert me to some slanderous comment about me. Well, thanks. There's nothing I can do, so I generally don't look for it.
But thanks for putting it in my timeline, so I have to look at it, pal.
This little Nick Sandman, he's a teenage kid with his Catholic school, took a bus from Kentucky to the March for Life. This had nothing to do with the March for Life. They can't pull off the private individual who has inserted himself into a matter of public concern. No, how Nick Sandman behaved when he was being harassed by an Indian is not a matter of public concern. There's no story to even write without the Washington Post making up what happened and getting actual facts wrong. I mean, it's kind of crucial, as everyone who saw that photo of the sweet, smiling Catholic schoolboy, as I describe it, smirking Hitler, as the Washington Post and others described it. Yeah. It makes a big difference who blocked whom, who got in whose face. And in fact, it was Nathan Phillips, the fake war hero and Indian, who made a beeline and starts beating his drum and singing loudly in Nick Sandman's face. He did. Poor little Nick Sandman, the teenage kid, he behaved very sweetly. I think more sweetly than many of us would have behaved.
Yeah. Well, because, listen, I have a teenage boy. I saw, when I looked at that video, an awkward teenager who didn't know what the hell to do in a situation like this.
But even thinking about it, I mean, even having months to contemplate, what should you do in such a situation? I don't know that any of us could have come up with a better response than to smile sweetly, as Nick Sandman did. The facts were wrong. The Washington Post ran 6 articles, 3 tweets, with this very short, 1-minute video that made it look like Sandman had walked up, and certainly the description around it, walked up and blocked the obnoxious Indian, when it was the reverse. Within the day their first article went up, there were also these, they call themselves they're the Black Hebrew.
Oh yeah,
or something. Yeah, you see them around Times Square. They're crazy, and they're constantly screaming and harassing people. So they were screaming and harassing these poor Catholic schoolboys. They posted a video of an hour and 45 minutes of everything that happened. So the truth was out there. It was online. The Washington Post didn't care. They wanted to turn this kid into a worldwide object of hate. And the judge, Judge Bertelsmann, federal district court judge appointed by Carter, he just wrote everything off to, who accosted whom? That's a subjective term, and this is an opinion. And
right. See that
the Indian told them that.
That's what concerns me even more, Ann, if I can jump in here, because this is just an assault on facts and truth. You cannot look at this story and say it's just a matter of opinion about who confronted whom. The facts still matter, don't they? Otherwise, everything's an opinion, and nobody actually has to worry about the truth.
Yes, I think that's the issue, and as I point out very briefly in the column, in every other context, in Hollywood movies, in politician stump speeches, when you have a gigantic corporation crushing the lone individual, the Mr. Smith goes to Washington, we're always taking the side of the lone individual against the big bad corporation. Nope, not in this case. You could not get more of a lone private individual than a 16-year-old boy who's come to town for a pro-life march. That, as everyone has admitted or pointed out, that, of course, is the real reason the Washington Post and the rest of the media mob hate Nick Sandman. He is white, male, from Kentucky, wearing a MAGA hat he had bought in Washington, D.C., and attending a pro-life march. Wow, you got everything going against you in the media's eyes for that. So I concluded the column by writing a little bio of Judge Bertelsmann that was absolutely legally unassailable, because everything I said about him, for example, that he's an avid collector of kiddie porn and a white nationalist, and so on and so forth. It's either opinion, subjective term, or someone told me that.
Yeah, I know. I read that and I was shocked that this Carter appointee had done all of those things. And was a white supremacist.
And a draft dodger.
White supremacist draft dodger, and was accused of cheating on his bar exam. Well, you'll get all of those. Information. I was going to call them facts, but the facts don't matter anymore. You'll get those from Ann Coulter's column.
Bio I cooked up the same way the Washington Post cooks up its stories.
We'll put those in his Wikipedia page, but in the meantime, we'll have to wait till next week to talk to Ann Coulter. Ann, thank you always for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, Larry. Bye-bye.
You bet. That's Ann Coulter, AnnCoulter.com. It's 4:25.